Hello, welcome to Go to Uni English class. My name is Mr. Agaibe, and in today's lesson we shall be looking at noun phrase. What is a noun phrase? Before we answer that question, I want us to review our learning objectives. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to define the concept of noun phrase. You should be able to identify noun phrases either in sentences or in paragraphs or in texts. You should also be able to give examples of noun phrases of your own. You should be able to generate them on your own. And finally, you should be able to discuss the function of noun phrases, the different functions that noun phrases carry out. So let's go back to our fundamental question. What is a noun phrase, or what are noun phrases? Noun phrases refer to a group of words that name people, places, concepts, and things. And by this, we meant that you have a group of words carrying out the same functions that noun do in sentences. So let's move on. The noun phrase, also called nominal group, consists of a noun as head word and determinants or modifiers. Of course, modifiers are involved when you are talking about noun phrases. They are used with the noun head or the head word to form the noun phrases we are talking about. So when you talk about modifiers, you are talking about those determinants that are used with noun phrases. They can either be placed before the noun or after the noun. When they are placed before the noun, we have what is called pre-modifiers, and when they are placed after the noun, you have what is called post-modifiers. We are going to go into the study and review some of them, and then you will get to understand as we proceed in our discussion regarding the topic. So what we are saying in essence is that noun phrases are a group of words that carry out the same naming job that nouns do in sentences. Let's take some examples. We are going to make use of a particular word to generate noun phrases. For instance, we are going to make use of a common noun, man. Of course, when you are talking about a man, you are talking about a grown-up male folk, right? It's generic. So whoever that is a man, whoever that is male and is grown up is a man. So let's make use of the word to generate noun phrases. The first one is the man. The man is a noun phrase. It is made up of an article, a definite article, and a noun. Another example is the old man. The old man also is a good example of a noun phrase. This time around you have a noun, an adjective, and a determiner. Another example is the tall old man, where you have a noun, an adjective, another adjective, and a determiner. You have the tall, educated old man. You have a noun, 3 adjectives, and a determiner. And finally, you have the tall, newly wedded, educated old man, where you have a noun, 4 adjectives, and a determiner. Now, if you look at these phrases, they vary in length, in the number of sentences involved, but they have the same status, grammatical status. They carry out the same job in sentences. Whether you have just 2 words forming a noun phrases, or you have 5 words forming a noun phrases, or up to 10 forming a noun phrase, the job is still the same. Whether they come from the beginning of the sentence, or they come in the middle of the sentence, or at the end of the sentence, they have one thing in common. So we are going to study them and see how it will go. Now, one thing that is very important about noun phrases is the fact that they help us explain things. They help us give vivid examples. So let's move on and see how it works. Now, noun phrase is descriptive. Instead of using a single common noun, we use a noun phrase to make what we are referring to appear more specific. And this is important. They are more descriptive than maybe using just a common noun or a proper noun. Let's look at the example that we've given. Let's take the example man. Man is generic. When you say a man is coming here, nobody knows the person, and nobody will even know the person when you simply say a man. But when you say the man, it gives someone a picture, probably someone you have mentioned, or someone that the listener is aware of. Okay, when you say the man, probably you mentioned him earlier on, so you narrow the reference to a more specific person. But when you say the old man, the picture is even clearer, because this time around, it's not just the man, but the man that is old. And when you say the tall old man, you are narrowing down the definition. You are going to look for someone who is old and who is tall. And then when you say the tall, educated old man, you are making the work less, by stating the qualities of the person you are referring to. For instance, it's not just an old man. You are looking for someone who is old, educated, and tall. And finally, when you say the tall, newly wedded, educated old man, the picture becomes clearer. If he lives in the neighborhood, everyone will know the person you are referring to. Or if he is maybe a colleague in the office, everyone will know the person you are referring to, because the phrase has enough description to refer to that particular person directly. So what we are saying in essence is that this topic is vitally important, and we must learn how to make use of noun phrases to make references to things that we have around us, to things that we want to talk about. So let's move on and see some of the other examples of noun phrases that we have here. Number one, the newly painted building. Of course, the head word here is building, while the newly painted is an example of pre-modifiers, and it combines with the head word to form a noun phrase. Another example is the newly renovated house beside a filling station. There's something specific about this one because it involves pre-modifiers and post-modifiers. The noun head there is house, while the newly renovated is an example of pre-modifiers, and beside the filling station is an example of post-modifiers. So you have other examples such as all the junior students in the class. Another example is the fresh state and federal university civil servant. So these are some of the examples of noun phrases that we have been able to identify in this lesson. Now, you have a task of, generating some of them yourself. By the time we are through or done with the lesson, you should be able to have a clear understanding of how noun phrases work and how to generate them, and then it's up to you to generate as many as possible, and then probably use them in sentences, and then while reading you should be able to identify them, because it is important. Your knowledge of how to identify them is vitally important, because in WAEC and NECO you'll be tested in that area. Okay, you should be able to identify. So let's look at noun phrases and how they work with modifiers. So noun phrases contain modifiers. They involve modifiers. And of course, when you are talking about modifiers, like I mentioned earlier on, you have pre-modifiers and post-modifiers. And there are certain words that pre-modify and post-modify nouns. For instance, you have demonstratives, you have adjectives, you have articles, and the rest of them. We're going to look at them and see how they work with noun to form noun phrases. Let's start with demonstratives. Of course, when you are talking about demonstratives, you are talking about those, so in most cases, demonstrative pronouns. Those words that help us demonstrate, by pointing at certain things we want to refer to. For instance, you have words like this, you have words like that, you have those, you have these, and the rest of them. So let's see how they work with nouns to form noun phrases. Let's take some examples. That boy. It's a demonstrative because by the time you say that boy, you are almost pointing your finger towards the direction where the boy is either sitting or standing. You have these boys. Of course, they are close by. When you say that, it's afar off. And when you say these, they are more than one and close by. But you are almost pointing at them, even though they are close by. You say these boys. And when you say this girl, she's just one and she's close by. So you notice that in the examples we have, that boy, you have boy, a common noun, and a demonstrative. When you put the two together, you have a noun phrase. The same thing applicable to these boys and this girl. All right. Another example is possessives. Of course, possessives are words that show ownership, words that show possession. And in most cases, we take them from possessive pronouns. Let's look at some examples. My gown, his book, her car. Of course, my is a possessive pronoun. All right, it combines with gown to form a noun phrase. My gown. The same thing with his book, her book, and her car. All right, so you have some of these examples. Another example of modifiers that go with nouns to form noun phrases include articles. Of course, we have only three in English. You have definite and indefinite articles. The definite article is the, T-H-E, while indefinite articles are a and an. So let's look at how they work with nouns to form noun phrases. A man, an orange, the stars. Okay, they are examples of noun phrases. And here you have the articles being used with nouns to form noun phrases. And finally, let's look at another set, adjectives. There are so many adjectives, and these ones are very common. We use them with nouns to describe the people or things that we want to talk about. So let's take two examples here and see. The handsome man, an old girl, and the rest of them. A girl cannot really be old, but here we have an old girl. So what we are saying in essence is that all these words are modifiers, and they go with nouns to form noun phrases. And there is something that I want to mention here. Some of them cannot be used together. For instance, you can use an article and an adjective to qualify a noun, but you can't use a demonstrative and a possessive modifiers or modifier to describe a noun at the same time. For instance, you can't say that my gown. Is not grammatically accepted. Well, some people may likely want to argue that maybe it's from the point of view of prescriptive grammar, but ordinarily a lot of people frown on such expressions. So you can't say that my gown. You can simply say my gown or that gown of mine. Okay, so demonstratives and possessives, especially possessive pronouns, do not go together in one place when you are making sentence structures. So let's continue. We're going to look at functions of noun phrases. I mentioned this earlier on, and I said noun phrases perform the jobs that nouns do in sentences. Of course, in sentences, nouns function as subject, object, and other functions in a sentence structure. They can function as a subject of a sentence. They can function as object of a verb or the sentence. They can function as subject complement. They can function as object of preposition and the rest of them. So the same functions that nouns carry out in sentences are the same functions that noun phrases do in sentences. The only difference is that in the case of noun phrases, you have more than one word. You have a group of words doing the same function. So let's take some of the examples. Noun phrase as a subject of a sentence. Now, a subject is the doer of the action, or that particular thing which the sentence is talking about is the subject. So let's take some examples. The little girl is my cousin. Of course, the underlying part is the little girl, and is functioning as the subject of the verb is. In the second example, you have the boy was apprehended. The boy underlined is functioning as the subject of the verbs was apprehended. Okay, and they are all noun phrases. So what we are saying in essence is that a noun phrase can function as a subject of a sentence. Another function of a noun phrase is it can function as the object of a verb. Okay, when you are talking about an object in a sentence structure, you are talking about that particular thing, that particular word or group of words that receive the action carried out by the subject, or that particular word that is affected by the action carried out by the subject. So let's look at some examples. The man killed the snake. Of course, you have two noun phrases in that sentence. The man is a noun phrase. The snake is also a noun phrase. But the second noun phrase is functioning as the object of a verb. And what is the verb in that sentence? The verb in the sentence is killed. Okay, so the man killed the snake. So the snake is a noun phrase and it is functioning as the object of the verb killed. The same thing with the second sentence. Festus drives a new Toyota cars. Festus drives new Toyota cars. Okay, that's the sentence structure. And then you have new Toyota cars underlined as a noun phrase. And then the function is, it is functioning as the object of a verb. Another example is noun phrase as subject complement. Of course, when you are talking about a complement, you are talking about that particular word or group of words that point back at a particular word or noun that is already mentioned. Both the subject and the complement are same, making reference to the same thing. So let's take some examples. He is the head boy. The underlined part is the head boy. And who is he? The head boy. Who is the head boy? He. So the underlined part is the complement of the subject. And the subject in that sentence is he. So the head boy points back to the subject, which is he. And the same thing is applicable in the second example, where you have Festus is a weak politician. A weak politician we are talking about is Festus. And Festus that we are talking about is a weak politician. So you notice that the underlined part, which is a noun phrase, is pointing back at Festus, who is the subject of the sentence. So you now have nouns functioning, or noun phrases functioning as subject complement in sentence structures. Another function we want to look at is noun phrase as object of the preposition. Of course, you may remember that a preposition is a word that shows relationship between other words in sentences. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Daddy is at the front gate. The underlined part, the front gate, is a phrase and is a noun phrase and is the object of the preposition at. The teacher asked for all the names of the new students. All the names of the new students are underlined and they form what is called a noun phrase. And in this case, the group of words are functioning as the object of the preposition for in that sentence structure. And then finally, let's take this one, noun phrase as a position. Of course, by a position we mean a certain form of information that is given to say more things about a particular noun that is already mentioned in the same sentence structure. For instance, you have a noun mentioned, and after mentioning the noun, you have additional information that says something more about that noun that is already mentioned. So you can see nouns functioning as a position in certain sentences. As we proceed, it will be clear. Now let's take these examples. Ronaldo, a renowned footballer of all time, will resign soon. So the underlined part of that sentence structure is a renowned footballer of all time. Of course, it's a noun phrase and it is functioning as a position in the sentence structure. And there is something about a position that I want you to understand. First of all, you must understand that appositions are optional statements, optional information in any given sentence structure, and that is why anytime they are used, you have them being separated from the rest of the clause by using inverted commas. We use inverted commas, we use commas to separate them. Okay, for example, you have Ronaldo, comma, a renowned footballer of all time, comma, will resign soon. And then the same thing is applicable in the second example. James, comma, the new English language teacher, is kind. And one thing with a position is that the sentence can do without them. For instance, in the first example, Ronaldo will resign soon. So you can take off their position and the sentence will still make meaning. And the same thing applicable in the second example, where you're going to have something like James is kind. Alright, so with this we have said so much about noun phrases. We've defined them. We also gave some examples of noun phrases and their functions. So let's look at one of the questions that we have here. It is picked from WAEC past questions. So let's take it. The teacher raised an instant alarm and the neighbors came crashing to the scene. Of course, it's taken from a comprehension. In most cases, questions about grammatical names and functions come under comprehension in WAEC and NECO. So this one too is picked from there, one of the past questions. So an instant alarm is underlined. So the question now is, what is the grammatical name for the phrase as used in the passage? Another part of the question is, what is its grammatical function? So when you read that structure, you're going to identify the meaning or the name of the underlined part, and after that you're going to say what that part is doing in that particular sentence structure, the function it is performing in that particular sentence structure. So you have the teacher raised an instant alarm and the neighbors came crashing to the scene, ... Now let's begin our grammatical analysis. The teacher forms a noun phrase, and this time around it is functioning as the subject of that sentence. Raised is a verb, and instant alarm is also a noun phrase. The first noun phrase is functioning as the subject of the sentence. Remember, we said the teacher, and then we said raised is a verb, and then what follows again is a noun phrase. But this time around, what is that particular one doing? The first one is functioning as the subject, and the second one is functioning as what? So going by the teaching we have here, it should be clear to you that the second one, the underlined part, the underlined noun phrase, an instant alarm, is functioning as the object of the verb raised. Okay, so that answers the question, the two questions that we have. So the answer for the question should be, the grammatical name should be a noun phrase, and then the grammatical function should be object of the verb raise. So it is a noun phrase, and the noun phrase is functioning as the object of the verb raised. Okay, you can also read more about noun phrases using some of these materials. There are some books here: Excellence in English for Senior Secondary School Students, Book 1. You also have New Concept English for Senior Secondary School, Book 2. You have a Grammar of English, the Student Companion. You can read some of these things. There are a lot of grammar books that you can lay your hands on. You can also check online and all of that. So with this, we have come to the end of today's lesson on noun phrases. Thank you for choosing Go to Uni platform, and thank you for being part of the lesson, and thank you for being attentive. So enjoy yourself.